Our top story tonight, Napier MP and former Police Minister Stuart Nash has been sacked from Cabinet for misconduct, which the Prime Minister has called utterly inexcusable. At around 5 p.m, the Prime Minister became aware of an email sent by Stuart Nash to 2 donors in which he details confidential Cabinet discussions about a commercial rent relief package in 2020.
In the email, he sets out both his opposition to the decision Cabinet reached and sets out the position that individual members of the Cabinet took in the discussions. This is a clear breach of Cabinet's collective responsibility and Cabinet confidentiality. Stuart Nash has fundamentally breached my trust and the trust of his Cabinet colleagues. His conduct is inexcusable. In addition, the 2 recipients of the email were donors. Troy Bowker and Greg Loveridge via GRL Holdings Limited have both donated to Stuart Nash. They are also commercial property owners who had an interest in the Cabinet decision. That crosses a line that is totally unacceptable to me. I expect ministers to uphold the highest ethical standards, and his actions raise a perception of influence that cannot be allowed to stand.
Stuart Nash was already on a final warning, but the Prime Minister making it clear today that the incident would have resulted in his dismissal in its own right, and he will not be returning to Cabinet. Well, political editor Jenna Lynch joins us now. And Jenna, this is not just a technical breach, is it? It raises the question of influence being bought by donors.
That's right. So not only has Stuart Nash disclosed sensitive Cabinet information, that's against the rules, not only has he disagreed with Cabinet in public, that is also against the rules, he gave that sensitive information to political donors of his, and that was the exacerbating factor in Chris Hipkins' decision to sack him on the spot. Of course, Stuart Nash has been on warning after warning after warning, and was on his final warning, but Chris Hipkins said the severity of this breach alone was enough to sack Stuart Nash. He wouldn't accept his resignation. He sacked him to make a point that what he did was completely unacceptable.
Oh, it's extraordinary. So Stuart Nash is gone from Cabinet. And reading between the lines, Jenna, from the Prime Minister's tone today, Stuart Nash's career in Parliament is over, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of up to Stuart Nash as to whether he wants to stay on as an MP. National leader Christopher Luxon is calling for him to go immediately. That would spark a by-election in Napier, because you have to be within 6 months of a general election to avoid that by-election cutting in. We are 2 weeks out from that mark. So if Stuart Nash hangs on for the next 2 weeks, that's probably the most likely outcome here, and possibly not standing at the next election. But it is difficult to see how Stuart Nash can remain on as an MP when he has lost the trust of his Cabinet colleagues. Those same Cabinet colleagues are his caucus colleagues. They have sensitive, confidential conversations all of the time, and now they know that Stuart Nash has been repeating those sensitive conversations to donors.
Well, Jenna, Hipkins took a risk 2 weeks ago by not removing Nash from Cabinet for what was a pattern of behaviour. That is now blown up. So will questions linger for Hipkins too over his political management?
There are questions over Chris Hipkins' political management of this. He was given 3 opportunities to sack Stuart Nash properly. There were calls for his head, and given Stuart Nash's behaviour, given his ongoing behaviour, given how much everyone knows about Stuart Nash and the tenor of his behaviour, the warning signs were all there, and in the background conversations around this place, there was a sort of acknowledgement that over the next couple of weeks something more was likely to come to light, and by golly gosh, it sure did tonight. Chris Hipkins had absolutely no option but to draw a line in the sand over this, but he could have nipped this in the bud when he made all of those other breaches 2 or 3 weeks back.
Such a fascinating day, as usual. Thank you for joining us from Parliament. There's political editor Jenna Lynch.